If you're moving to the Twin Cities from a warmer climate, you have to be prepared for winter. And it's one thing to have all the essentials to, survive winter. We just did a video on that. It's another thing completely to have luxury upgrades that don't just make winter tolerable or survivable, they actually can make it pretty cozy and honestly pretty easy. And a lot of these tie into a home, and some of them are things that would be really hard to not do the first time around. So if you're moving to the Twin Cities and you're buying a home or you're building a home upon arrival, you're gonna wanna watch this video. All right, y'all, like I said, if you're moving to the Twin Cities and the goal is to put in roots, right? It's not a very, very temporary move, then you really only get to do that once. Maybe you could go somewhere and come back, but that's different. I mean, for the folks who intend to move here and make this their home, which I believe is a very, very wise decision. We help a lot of people do that, but you only get to do it once. And while there are a lot of these things that I'm calling luxury, upgrades, some of them, frankly, aren't even really that luxurious. Some of them are extremely luxurious, but there are things you can do to make things so much easier. And if you have the means, if you have the money to pull it off first thing when you're building a house or when you're buying a house, my opinion is that you'll be really, really glad you did, and your transition to Minnesota will be so much easier. I grew up in Minnesota, and I've really come to love the winter in Minnesota and appreciate so much about it. I actually think that the brutal cold and the scariness of winter is actually what makes Minnesota great all year round. I think it creates a buffer from way more people coming here, because if the weather was, 70 all the time, the population here would be unbelievable. And it would no longer be an awesome place to live. That's my opinion. It would be too crowded, etc. But our winter just does such a good job of keeping too many people from moving to Minnesota that it is, in my opinion, one of the biggest reasons of why it's an awesome place to call home. But let me help you upgrade your life here in the Twin Cities with some of these luxury upgrades. And I basically have three main categories: for in the home, for in your car, and more broadly like entertainment, right? Like how to enjoy winter and what are things that you should be thinking about, and maybe just like how can you make like kind of the winter like pass a little bit more easily. So we're gonna start in the home because that's a pretty big deal, and also we're real estate agents, so I guess that makes the most sense. I think the first thing, and most people probably understand this, is a fireplace. It can be a gas fireplace or a wood fireplace, totally up to you and your style. Gas is obviously so easy. You probably flip a switch or hit a remote and you got fire, gas fire. You don't have the beautiful crackle and sort of that smoky smell necessarily of a wood fireplace. But if you're after the smell and the crackle, you could do a gas fireplace in like a wood wick or something like that, in a candle that kind of smells like a campfire, and you could have kind of the best of both if that's really something that you're looking for. But a fireplace in a room that you intend to spend some time in is just super, super cozy and really nice to have. There are plenty of people who put one in like the primary bedroom, which is, I think, even more luxury upgrade. If you have one in your, let's say your main floor living room, your lower level basement family room, and then also the primary, pretty good, not too shabby. I suppose there's houses that have even more than that in terms of fireplaces. But the gas is going to be the easy button. The wood is a little bit just more of that charm and that romantic, aspect of it. Another big upgrade would be to upgrade your heating, really in your thermostat, to a smart thermostat. Very, very easy upgrade, but it can make a really big difference. I like to sleep in like a really cold room, but I don't love waking up to an ice cold house, right? So being able to program it, super, super nice. Being able to set it low when you're away and to, let's say, 50 or something like that, right? That's warm enough usually to keep your pipes from freezing, but that's really cold. So if you came home and it was 50, you'd have an uncomfortable few hours at least. So the beauty of a smart thermostat is to be able to control it remotely. And also it can learn some of your habits of moving throughout the house. Another big upgrade for the heating element of your house would be to have zoned heating. That's basically where most houses in the Twin Cities have either a basement and a main floor, or a basement, a main floor, and a second floor, right? That's probably the most common. There are houses that have a basement and a main floor. There are houses that have a basement, a main, a first, and a second, but basement, main, and second are probably very, very common, the most common. So in a typical zone setup, you would probably have 3 thermostats, 1 on each floor. The basement of a house in Minnesota without zoned heating is almost always going to be colder than the main floor. And main floor to second floor, that heat change doesn't happen quite as dramatically. But the basement, almost always, it's notably cooler in a basement. So you can either put a fireplace down there and heat like the main space, and that can be helpful as sort of a hack to not have the zoned heating system, or you can just get a zoned heating setup and to where that is set to 70, 68, 75, depends on who you are, right? And that basement will be controlled. And basically how it works is there's dampeners that open and close. So your furnace might be on, but dampeners are closed to the first and second floor, and they're only sending it to the basement. If maybe you are the only one who's like a freeze baby, right? You're the only person who's cold, or maybe your significant other or one of your children or something is always cold, I would recommend a heated blanket. That's a pretty cool upgrade. And they do make heated blankets that are battery powered. They're maybe a little clunky with the battery, and some of them are just plug into the wall. But a heated blanket for a person in particular who is cold all the time is very nice. For me, again, I run cool. I'm warm in this room I'm in right now. But my fiance is cold a lot, right? So to be able for her to just heat herself with a heated blanket and get real cozy under there is super, super nice. And then I can be sitting right next to her, not under the heated blanket, feeling very, very comfortable as well. Heated blanket, pretty sweet little upgrade. And I'll take that a step further for the next one, which would be like a heated vest, a heated hoodie, a heated jacket, something along those lines. Again, my fiance just got a heated vest, and she loves it. She'll wear it under a coat, or just, let's say she wants to go shovel, and you kind of get sweaty when you shovel, right? You get warm because you're working a lot when you go shovel, but you also don't want to go out and feel that bite, So a little heated vest, turn that on. It makes wandering out into the proper winter just a little bit better. That said, make sure you charge it, or you're going to be just annoyed every time you try to go put it on. Another upgrade, which tends to be on the more luxury end, not something you typically are going to see in like a first-time home buyer starter home, but you do every now and then, is a towel warmer. Also towel dryer. I think depending on where you're coming from, a towel warmer is a towel dryer. If you're not looking for it to be warm, then it's just a towel dryer. But in Minnesota, you can put a towel on a towel warmer, and it is a proper towel warmer, because then you can get out of the bath or the shower and wrap yourself in a nice warm towel. Obviously, it'll cool off pretty quickly, but that first hit, luxury. Speaking of luxury in a bathroom space, heated floors in a bathroom, heated tile most commonly, is a very nice little upgrade. It feels lovely. I've shown a lot of houses, and even just showing it, you step onto that tile and you're expecting it to be cold. You're just used to these sensory inputs. You're expecting it to just be a little bit cooler than the wood or the carpet or whatever, and you step on it and it's warmer, and you're like, ooh, it doesn't, I swear, I've shown a ton of houses, no matter what, you step on that and it's warm, there's something just like, oh, that's very, very nice. And really any floor that is tiled is gonna be heatable. I've heard of people heating like wood or vinyl floors. I don't know. I would look into it. I would make sure that that's possible. I know it's been done. I know I've seen it done, but it always seems like this doesn't seem like a very good idea to me, but what do I know? Any concrete floor you can heat, right? So if you're heating just the concrete, the subfloor, under a carpet, okay, that seems reasonable. If you're heating the concrete under a vinyl floor, that seems reasonable. But when people just put in like the heat strips underneath an LVP with maybe some thin set, I don't know why. I always wonder how well that's going to last into, you know, the future. I think one of the more luxury upgrades as far as heating floors goes, which it's one of those things where, again, if you're from somewhere else and you're building a home and you have, you know, the means to pull this off, the budget to pull this off, but you didn't know that it was a thing, you're welcome. A heated garage floor. That is a pretty sweet upgrade, and probably it would be the only heat source you need in a garage to like keep the edge off, to keep it working real nice. You also, so another upgrade from there would be a heated garage or a garage heater. You're going to need multiple things in order for that to work correctly. For one, it's going to have to be pretty well insulated. Otherwise, you're just going to be heating the outdoors, right? Like every old man ever says. You heating the outdoors? No, I'm trying to heat my garage and it's all escaping to the outdoors. So you're going to need really good insulation on the walls and the ceiling, especially the ceiling. I would just make sure that it's done well, you know? Make sure that you're using the right materials and stuff like that for a garage. It's probably a DIY-able thing that plenty of people do. But I also have seen it done horrendously bad in garages as well. So garage heater, it can be gas or electric. Typically it's just like up in sort of, you know, in the corner of the garage and it's heating it. But if you also had that heated floor in the garage, that thing might not be kicking on all that often, if at all. Then if you're gonna have the heated garage, then I think it's almost a must. One thing is basically for sure a must have, which would be a floor drain. Plenty of houses, maybe a surprising amount of houses in Minnesota, I have one actually, are built without a floor drain in the garage. So what happens is your car gets full of snow, right? Under, you know, the undercarriage, especially in the wheel wells and on the wheels themselves, that gets covered in snow, whatever, it's all good. Then you roll into the garage, and then if your garage is heated, that's all gonna melt. And if that melts and it has nowhere to go, doesn't have sloped floors and doesn't have a drain, well, it's just gonna sit there. And water mixed with salt, by the way, and sand is gonna pretty quickly, I'll say slowly, but shockingly quickly, is gonna start to pit that concrete on the floor, and the concrete floors are gonna start to not look very great. So a floor drain with sloped floors going to it, or properly sloped floors that slope down and sort of like out and actually give water a place to run, that can also do the trick. But the real deluxe package is sloped floors with a floor drain, maybe even 2 floor drains, and you put some epoxied floor on that, real nice. Then even take it another step further, if you have a hose spigot in your garage and you can hose out the garage and get it nice and clean, if you ever want to be working in there or whatever and you don't want to be tracking all, you know, all the water, all the sand and salt and stuff like that, then to me that's the most deluxe package, the most deluxe way to enjoy a garage. And while we are in the garage, I'm going to talk about something that you probably are going to have in the garage. In the essentials video, I said you need a good shovel. I would say you still do need a good shovel, even if you have this upgrade, because sometimes the shovel is just the most practical way of clearing a little bit of snow. But the real upgrade is a proper snow blower. And I'm not talking about a snow thrower. I'm not talking about one of those little guys, okay? I'm talking about the real deal with some real good tires on it, probably self-propelled. I think they probably all are these days. It's gotta be self-propelled. If it's not, it's gonna be heavy, and it should be heavy because snow can get super, super heavy at times. If you have a really good snow plow, there's a lot of different brands, so I'm not gonna say any in particular, but look online, you know, watch some videos. If you have a really good snow blower, that will make just clearing your driveway so much easier, clearing your sidewalks. You might feel, you know, inclined like, oh, this is so easy. I'm gonna go do my neighbor's sidewalk, right? And that gets you instant credibility. I'm kidding. I mean, in some neighborhoods, that makes you pretty cool, but not, I suppose, not everywhere. I would also like to say that if there's a possibility of you getting heated grips on your snowblower, that is a sweet, sweet deal. I bought a snowblower a while ago. I didn't have a huge driveway, and I thought, oh, I can deal with this. But then I realized that it was difficult to have anywhere to put the snow because of how my lot is organized. So I actually have to throw it all the way across my alley. I had to ask my neighbor first. But I had to throw it all the way across the alley, and with a shovel, that is not cool. That's a ton of work. So I bought a really nice snowblower. It had heated grips. In my head, I was like, that's probably just like, psh, that's just marketing, you know? That's probably not gonna do that much. It's awesome. If I had not known how good it was, I probably would have continued to think that it wasn't that cool. But now I am a convert. I think it's really, really nice. It can, you know, sometimes your hands will get too sweaty in gloves. You know, if you're out there for, I don't know, half an hour, sometimes you're like, oh man, these gloves are driving me nuts. You can take them off and still have that sweet, sweet heated grip. Again, it truly luxury, right? Like not a must-have at all, but it's pretty nice. I'll take the snow removal all one step further and say that you could also just hire a snow removal service. If you're completely averse to the idea of having a snowblower and dealing with a snowblower and shoveling at all, well, there's a lot of people have businesses to remove the snow. Just like in the warmer seasons here, we have lawn service, you know, grass cutting, etc. There is also snow removal services that will do an incredible job. And not only will they do an incredible job, but more often than not, they have such great equipment that they will make how long it would take you to shovel like almost embarrassing, right? We're like, wow, I can't believe I was doing that, because they make it so fast. So it can be really nice. A couple things to keep in mind is sometimes you might have to come home for the day and it's not done yet because you're just somewhere along their route. And depending on how much snow they've gotten, that you might be, you know, further down the line. So if you're really, really like, well, I just want this done ASAP, it might be on you, right? Or you might have to pay a little bit extra to be early in somebody's schedule and so forth. Which is why I would say probably the most luxurious snow removal option, and it's probably not a completely perfect solution all the time, but it would be a heated driveway and a heated sidewalks. It happens. It is not common to see here, but it does happen. And when I say it's the most luxurious thing, it is for sure. It's really going to be tough to beat. That said, there's going to be like water moving down, right, the driveway. So you're going to have to make real sure that you have good control over the water. Any of these companies who install, they should definitely be thinking about, you know, where the water is going. So that shouldn't be on you, but just put that in the back of your mind. Snow's gonna melt, that's gonna mean water. Where's that water gonna go? Is that taken care of? Heading back into the house, one thing that frankly a lot of people are gonna be like, well, that's not luxury. It's true, it's not really a luxury item, but it is a luxury that not every single house has. And it's really common in a lot of homes, but not everything. This is a foyer or a mudroom. Just some sort of a staging room where you don't just come out of, you know, off the street. You know, your friend doesn't come into the house necessarily and they're just on your hardwood floors, okay? That is a thing. My house is like that, actually. And it's, you know, it's just a thing you gotta deal with. And it's really just not the best way for a home to be set up. But it's existed for decades and decades and decades. So, you know, you deal with it. You find a way to deal with it. But if a house has, let's say like a front entry, a small porch where shoes can be dropped and like wet shoes and stuff can be dropped, really nice. If it has a mudroom off the garage or something like that, super nice. So when you and your kids come home every day, you have a place to drop all your stuff, probably on some tiled floor, and you just go on with your life and it's not really all that distracting. A mudroom, a foyer, it's really nice to have. Not every house is going to have it. Shouldn't be a deal breaker in my opinion, but just know that that should be valued at like, oh yeah, that will save me a little bit of hassle. Then for that foyer or mudroom, one little thing that I didn't mention on the essentials because it's far from essential, and it's hard to say it's really like a true luxury, but it is a nice to have, especially if you work outside or especially if you're, you know, doing like proper winter hikes and things like that. If you intend to walk outside every day, like walking the dog or just going for a walk, this will be really nice to have. It's basically a boot dryer, also a boot warmer. But typically what it is it looks like an upside down boot, kind of smaller, and you would just put your wet boots on it upside down. Typically that's going to sit on some kind of a boot tray. So then when the water melts off the boots or the snow melts off the boots, it will drip down onto a boot tray, and then everything else will basically just kind of dry off of it. And it should mean that every single day you should have a dry pair of boots. There's a possibility that certain boots would get so waterlogged that you would need 2 pairs of boots and, 2 boot warmers. So it would take 2 days, but probably not. That would probably be a very unique situation. And then lastly, for probably in that foyer, in that mudroom, some people would put this in the lower level coming out of the backyard, depending on how one's lifestyle works. And I think this is true luxury. It would be a dog washing station. People do it. It would be like a small, probably elevated little like shower basin with kind of one of those like commercial dishwasher spray things, right? And then, towels and things like that. If you have a mudroom that, you don't want your guests to see, kind of like a, a messier room, like a mudroom, then that would be a really good place to have it. And if you just don't want, your dog to be able to track in, that's a pretty sweet upgrade. You do see it in houses here, but I would say, it is the exception. Way, way, way fewer people with dogs have something like that, which makes it a proper luxury upgrade. Now we're gonna move into the vehicle, into the whip, if you will. The number one thing, I've talked about this on this channel, on the podcast, things like that. To me, the number one and typically easiest upgrade, and I think it makes the biggest leap in quality of life, is a remote starter for a vehicle. There are all types of these remote starts. Some are just the button where you have to kind of have line of sight, and maybe it's 100 feet, maybe it's 500 feet, something like that. A lot of the clickers, the fobs that come from a dealership, they're gonna have that, and it's maybe gonna be in the few 100-foot range, right? Again, that is sweet. Most of the time, that's really, really nice. Every now and then, if let's say you're inside the mall, and it's like a 0-degree day, and you're trying to walk back out, you're not going to be able to get it heated that far ahead, which is why a more premium upgrade would be either a fob with like unlimited distance. I don't know that there's such a thing, but a fob with a massive distance, or like a phone app. A lot of cars these days have the phone app where you can just, like, anywhere that you have internet, you can get your vehicle started. It's really nice. Trust me. My favorite time for using that is in the gym. It's too far for the fob, and it's behind a bunch of concrete or whatever. But you can get that started as you're walking out of the gym. It's maybe a 5-minute walk out of the gym into the car, and in 5 minutes it's just enough to take the edge off. If you want to go 10 minutes or more, even better. You might get in. It might even be too hot in there, right? But I think it's very nice, because one of my favorite, hacks or a thing that people don't necessarily think about is that if you're in a heavy coat and you're driving in your car and you have the heat and it's slowly warming up, you are getting really warm and you're getting accustomed to just how warm that is. So then you're going to step out to the cold and it's going to feel really, really cold. So what I like to do, and what I would recommend you try, is you don't wear your coat in the car. You put it in the back seat, or the trunk or something. Trunk might be a little cold. Maybe the boot, or whatever, if you have like an SUV or something. But you have it somewhere where it's not on you, and then when you get out of the car, you put it on. And that way your body temperature isn't super, super warm, and you're not like starting to sweat, which will happen if you have your coat on in your car and you're just like heating it up, extraordinarily. Another hack to take that to another level would be that some electric cars, I think a lot of them, will warm up in your own garage. So let's say you have a not heated garage, okay? You can warm up your electric car inside the garage without creating all the fumes. But some people just pop the garage open, remote start it, and get things going that way. But also, if you have a heated garage, your car will be warm, but there will be an interesting period where you get in your car, it's warm, and then you start driving, and all of a sudden it's pulling much colder air into the car from outside. So there'll be kind of like a dip where temperature is nice and warm, it'll get a little chillier, and then it'll warm up. But honestly, that is not a huge deal in the grand scheme. That's still quite nice. I think a huge upgrade in just keeping your car looking good, but also keeping it from rusting faster. And yeah, I don't know, it's just a great upgrade in my opinion, is an unlimited car wash pass. I am currently at Mr. Car Wash or Mr. Wash or something like that. I love it. As long as you have locations close to you and your work and things like that, that kind of thing is just really nice. The thing that I like in particular about it is that I can get the exterior washed once a week, couple times a week, few times a week, if I happen to be by one, if it's happened to be, you know, snowy, slushy, stuff like that. And then eventually my floor mats and the inside is going to get a little bit dirty or dusty or, you know, slushy. And so you can go into the likes of a Mr. Car Wash and you can upgrade to get the interior done for like another $10 or $15 or something like that. So you're paying for the monthly thing for unlimited car washes, and to upgrade to do the inside is a smaller cost than if you just went to one of those places and asked for, you know, an interior wash and exterior wash. So I do that all year round, but in the winter it is like the super nice. And speaking of floor mats getting slushy and dirty, if you're just getting like the carpet floor mats for your car, they're gonna get pretty gnarly pretty quick in the winter. Maybe you could switch it out, that'd be okay. But in the winter in particular, it's gonna get pretty gnarly. So I would recommend you buy WeatherTech mats. And some manufacturers will make really nice, like rubberized, you know, precision fit mats, at which point you wouldn't necessarily need WeatherTech. I don't know that they're doing that much more than like what the manufacturer or dealership is doing, but it's hard to beat a WeatherTech mat. They really get precision, precisely fit, and they go high up on the sides, which is one of the best aspects of it, is that they go high up on the sides. The treads are pretty deep, so if you have your foot there and it's dripping down in there, it's not just like sitting on your shoe. It's going into a kind of like a little bit of a channel underneath that, and same with those higher sides. It's not just gonna like flip over the side and like pour under it, which would be probably maybe worse than actually just having carpet mats. So the WeatherTech mats are awesome. They also do like cargo spaces and trunk spaces if you're dealing with, you know, wet things going into the trunk. Then one thing you're gonna want for sure, all season tires at the very least on your vehicle. I think a nice upgrade to really make driving a lot easier is snow tires. Depending on the vehicle, I drive a kind of like a truck style thing, and I don't use snow tires anymore. I have like very nice, kind of like grittier, kind of off-roady style tires. I don't know that they're really, but yeah, they do a really good job in the snow, because a lot of it has to do with clearing the snow and getting that out of those grooves. But nice tires, super important. Every single winter, there's a first snow and a first kind of like dusting of like slippery roads. You kind of see who has not switched out tires, and not necessarily switched out just to winter tires, but who's been kind of riding dirty, you know, who has not very good tires on their car. They just kind of reveal themselves by running into other cars, running into guardrails, going to the ditch and things like that. So having good snow tires is such a nice upgrade, especially if you have a two-wheel drive car and a front-wheel drive. For the record, a rear-wheel drive car is not a good idea in Minnesota. Plenty of two-wheel drive pickups exist here, and they don't do great. You have to put sandbags in the back, and then they kind of do a good job. But front-wheel drive, in my opinion, is the bare minimum. Rear-wheel drive, it's nice in the summer, it's nice in the warmer months, but it will give you trouble in the winter. There's just not that many of those cars here, driven in the winter anyway. And so obviously you can upgrade that to have all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive. Those are great. That is not a requirement, but it certainly gives you a bit more confidence on the road. Good tires, all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, that kind of thing. That's a huge upgrade in just being able to navigate and feeling like you're not, you know, riding on like the absolute edge all the time. Then a few just luxury upgrades that really are so nice to have in a vehicle it's all about kind of heat, right? So number one would be a heated seat, okay? Heated seats, that's not that crazy. In Minnesota, it's a really nice upgrade, especially in the winter. I had a vehicle that had heated and cooled seats, which was also really nice because our summers also get pretty hot here. So to have that cooled seat was pretty sweet. I'll throw in as just kind of a little bonus nice to have is different climate control. If you and your passenger can have different climates, very nice. If your backseat passengers can have different climates, also super, super nice. Because yeah, I learned pretty quickly that my fiance and I just see temperature differently. We are very comfortable in different temperatures often, so that's been a super, super nice one. As a driver, a heated steering wheel. It seems, again, kind of like the heated grips on the snowblower, it seems like, yeah, I probably won't really be using that. You will. It's really nice. Because you don't realize necessarily just how cold a traditional steering wheel gets and stays for quite some time. The cabin can be really comfortable, but the steering wheel might not be. And so to the point where people have driving gloves, you might just have some wool gloves or some mittens or some like proper leather driving gloves to deal with a cold steering wheel. And yeah, if it's heated, you kind of do not need that at all. Another thing is heated mirrors. So specifically the side mirrors on the exterior of the car. Not all of those are heated. And when they aren't, they can frost up and it can be really difficult to like clear the ice. Every now and then you get kind of like a freezing rain situation where it's not just snow sitting on there that you can like brush away. It's like a coating of ice. And if you don't have heated mirrors, you kind of have to scrape at it, but it's so small and it feels kind of flimsy. So it can be harder to get that done. So heated mirrors, really nice. You're seeing a lot more cars these days just come with that stock, and they're barely even advertising it, but it's pretty cool. And then last thought, this isn't really for the car, but if you have anywhere that has valet parking, just feel free to use it. I don't use it that often, but if a place has valet and it's a cold day, I'm gonna use it. I'm gonna use it, I'm gonna tip the guy, I'm gonna feel good about it. But it's just a cool upgrade. If you have remote start, make sure you start it before you give them the tag or whatever. Otherwise you're gonna go out there thinking like, oh, I got valet, and then your car is gonna be delivered to you really cold. At which point you might as well have just started it and walked to it because it'll probably be more comfortable that way. Okay, now we're moving on to the final category, which I'm gonna say entertainment, something along those lines. The first of which is not really that luxurious, but it's really nice to have, is a gym membership. And even better if your gym membership has like a spa area, a sauna, a steam room, something like that, a hot tub, if that's your thing. Because then you can just like spend some time there. And especially when you're dealing with less daylight happening in the colder winter months, we also have less daylight. So if you can sort of extend that feeling of daylight by being in a gym, getting after it, where there's a lot of light, and then going into a steam room, kind of that warmth, you can kind of like trick your brain into thinking like, hey, it's not like winter all the time, So a gym membership is, again, not that luxurious necessarily, but you can go pretty luxurious with the gym membership. And I think you can upgrade from there. I think I still would want a gym membership personally, but you can upgrade from there with a sport court in a house. So whether you're building or buying a newer house that has something like this, a sport court is pretty cool. It can feel completely unnecessary at times. And I would say it is. It's not necessary. It is a luxury item. But if you have children who are very active, for one, they will play outside. So this idea that a kid must be miserable in the winter, not true. Some of my favorite memories are being a kid in the winter, enjoying the outdoors, sweating, like literally getting so warm, So a kid will enjoy the outdoors. But to have the option for a kid to enjoy being physical and active and stuff like that inside a sport court can be really great. Even if you don't have kids, I've seen the sport court used as a weight room pretty dang effectively. The beauty of it is the high ceilings typically. They're usually gonna have like 24, 30, something like that, foot ceilings in those sport courts, which can also get loud, so you gotta treat them acoustically. But I've seen proper gym setups in those sport courts with, free weights and racks and a Smith machine, and maybe like a cardio device or something like that. But those really can be tricked out for that if that's your thing as well. But you can also put, a basketball hoop. That's a really common thing. But also in Minnesota, you see a lot of this, of the hockey net, right? Just make sure that you have a solid wall behind the hockey net, or the hockey puck will put holes in the wall very easily. But a lot of them have like a concrete wall or something like that. So just make sure they're shooting at the concrete wall. But yeah, I've seen all sorts of things. I've seen like batting cage sort of style nets, maybe not with the pitch machine, but where somebody just wants to work on their swing. I've seen golf, tees with nets and things like that in the sport court. And which probably brings me to my next thing, which would be some sort of inside entertainment. It could be as simple as like a pool table, an air hockey table, ping pong, foosball, something like that. But take it to another level. I've seen like interior golf sims. We actually have a video on this channel of a home by like a custom home builder in the area that has a very, very cool golf sim in the basement. And I mean, it'd be like going to the golf sim place, right? Like very, very nice, very, very high end. And that can make winter, especially with golf, you can't really golf in the winter, but that can be pretty sweet being able to do something like that. Then another upgrade would be to have like a season pass to some sort of ski and snowboard hill, if that's your thing. Obviously a season pass is going to cost more than one time, but you will likely use it more, and certainly like a kid will almost always go more often if there's not the friction of having to like pay for it again, right? So the season pass is a pretty cool thing, and depending on how often a person goes, you can really, really get your money's worth for it. And yeah, it can be really nice. And even though we don't have mountains here, there are plenty of really great skiers and snowboarders who come out of here. I think we actually had a recent women's Olympic gold medalist, skier from here, and literally I think started on probably one of the worst ski hills, which was Buck Hill, which is right by where I lived growing up. But there really are a lot of different places to ski. Afton Alps, Welch Village, and further north there's like Spirit Mountain in Duluth, a considerably bigger hill, and then Lutsen furthest north, or even further up north, in my opinion, is probably one of the best in Minnesota. But it's a good drive, right? So it's a little bit more of like a vacation trip, than it is like, oh, just go there for the evening. Then if you can get some kind of winter hobby, whether it's ice skating, snowmobiling, if you want to get your own snowmobiles, people love to snowmobile here. My brother is one of them, loves to snowmobile. People also love to ice fish. There is kind of no end to the scope of what ice fishing can look like for people in Minnesota. It can be sitting on a 5-gallon bucket with a hole in the ground, on a lake in the city. Plenty of people do that, and maybe a nice coat on a cold day. Or it can mean, having an ice castle, which is basically like an RV that cranks down to bring it down to the ice with, heat and plumbing potentially, or something akin to plumbing. And those things can get massive, where just imagine parking a huge RV on the ice and fishing out of it. That's probably the most sort of deluxe version of it. Other people will live on a lake, and they'll have a like kind of a permanent home that they'll pull out with either a four-wheeler, but usually a snowmobile. They'll pull it out onto the ice, let it sit there until it has to come off the ice. And then, they just kind of have their permanent little home out there to ice fish out of. And yeah, it's pretty cool. If you ever hear somebody say like, I put the house out on the ice today, or I put the house out on the lake, that's probably what they mean, is they're doing something like that. But a lot of people also love to cross-country ski. For the runner, right, if you love to run, upgrading to cross-country skiing in the winter is, I'm telling you, it's like a cult. People love to cross-country ski. My aunt is obsessed with it. My aunt mourns the loss of winter. She's like, oh, I gotta go this whole summer without cross-country skiing. It's interesting. I'm not very good at it, so I don't have that same relationship to it. But yeah, cross-country skiing is a big one. There's all sorts of other things that I could say on this thing, but just know that there are those hobbies that people really, really get into. And then finally, I think the last luxury upgrade is at least one vacation in the winter. go somewhere. You don't have to go somewhere super tropical and super warm, but go somewhere where it is warmer, right? Where you can shed wearing a coat, and you can not have to do that for a week. Even if it's a 3-day weekend, having that break is really, really nice. If you can go 2 weeks, even better, right? If you can really break that up, and whether it's a proper vacation or a work trip where you just are somewhere else, then it sort of splits it up. And what I find is it makes winter just seem like, that wasn't that bad. Was this winter less bad this year? It might not have been, but you experienced a bit less of it, and so it just becomes a bit easier. That's it. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.